Well, hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome along to the Monday night Rabble here on the Rangers Rabble podcast. A full ball this evening, as you can see, a full house. So I'm sure we should have some blistering debate. Although I don't imagine there'll be much disagreement on most of the issues. With me this evening to talk all things Rangers, I have Mark. Mark, how we doing?
I'm all right, mate. How's yourself?
Not bad, not too bad at all. Stuart, how are we?
Good, Connor. Nice change to be on a Monday night rabble after Rangers have won away from home the previous day, so that makes a nice change.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Kieran. Kieran, how's it going?
All right, aye, pretty good. Just looking forward to getting dived straight into it.
Happy days. Yeah, well, listen, I haven't been on with any of these three for quite some time, so this is a pleasure for me tonight, I have to say. Okay, let's we'll come to yesterday shortly, because there's clear talking points from that. But first of all, let's just have a chat about some of the news that's broke sort of today, the last 24 hours. Mark, starting with the news that Kieran Dowell has left. He's went to Birmingham City in a 6-month loan, or it was a loan to buy potentially. I mean, right call. Basically, I don't think there was ever any question that there was a future for Kieran Dowell here, and I suspect we've probably seen him play his last match in a Rangers jersey.
To be fair, nothing would surprise me at all, but I dare say that once he gets down there and gets on the treatment table down there, then they'll not be taking that option to buy. They'll not be taking that up at all, I'm afraid to say. Listen, I spoke to, obviously I worked through Norwich, I worked in here, and pretty much 85% of the guys that are on my rig are all Norwich City fans. And every single one of them, a man, just about said to me that Kieran Dowell was better than Cantwell. And it also flew in the caveat if you can keep him fit. So I have no idea if he's any good or not, because I don't think I've seen him play 2 games in a row. And if he has played 2 games in a row, I don't think he's made it 3 games in a row. So for me, waste of money. No harm to the boy. He seems as if what I've seen of him, he's not a bad player, not a bad lad, but we've been carrying him for far too long, and I think it was time he went. So good bit of business to get him away, get him off a wage bill. Do I think Birmingham will take out the option to buy? Nope, I do not think so. But listen, stranger things have happened. But I think if he gets down there, gets a run of games and does well, fingers crossed, we'll get him off a wage bill.
Yeah, I mean, Stuart, really getting him off the wage bill is a major help. We know the finances and stuff, and if you want to make room to bring in potentially somebody for the next couple of days, I don't see it myself, but you would have had to have cleared that. It's a damning indictment of him that he was included in the European squad earlier this season for a variety of reasons. I mean, guys like Hagi, for example, we thought might have been getting out the door, and then all of a sudden he's hit blistering form, and in fact he's been offered a new contract as well, according to the stories that are out there. So, you know, you can see why that happened. But on Thursday night there, I think it was Thursday night, Connor Barron goes down and Kieran Dowell gets sent out to warm up. And I think collectively everybody was holding their breath thinking, please God, no. And I don't know if that's fair on Kieran Dowell. I don't know if he's that bad that he deserves that type of derision, but clearly through the injuries and all the hype he came with, it just hasn't worked.
No, it hasn't worked, and it's another remnant of allowing a manager, that manager being Michael Beale, to just dictate who he wanted. And then means that when a manager does move on for whatever reason that is, then you're left with that player. No harm to Kieran Dowell by all accounts. He doesn't seem to have caused any hassles. He gets his head down, trains, etc. But he's on a very decent amount of money per week. If you read is to be believed, about 16 grand a week. He's not contributing anything towards that, so we need to move him on. I think I said after the Fraserburgh game, and certainly after the Man United game, Kieran Dowell was in the squad for the Man United game because we had no Dells. It was a body, basically. But I thought it was very telling that you're playing Fraserburgh and Kieran Dowell and Rabbi Matondo weren't even in the squad there. There is a clear change in direction from this manager and the club. And whether that's been as a result of Patrick Stewart coming in and the conversations, the way the season has gone, where they are now saying that the youngsters in and around that first team who they believe have got the potential to make it into the first team, they are now going to be given their opportunities rather than playing a Kieran Dowell or a Rabbi Matondo. How many times did we see a Kieran Dowell come on, or even the odd time where he started a game and he was subbed at half time? You know, for whatever reason, Mark says, I don't doubt he's probably a very good footballer, but it just hasn't worked for him here. So I hope he goes and he smashes it down there. By all accounts, Davies is doing that. It sounds as if Birmingham fans have really taken to him in terms of, you know, his performances. So you hope that Kieran Dowell can do the same, and that then becomes a permanent move in the summer. But I'm happy to see the club reacting in this way and making these changes. We've been crying out for it. Said last week, this has been a shit show of a season, but Rangers have now got to try and get some form of benefit from it and from the situation that we find ourselves in. The league is gone. So what are the priorities? Clearly, if you can get through another round in Europe, maybe even two, whatever, that would be great. Scottish Cup. But the third thing for me would be testing these youngsters outside of that B team environment in the first team to see whether or not they're going to be capable, and getting them much needed time and experience in that first team before the start of next season. We've got to do that. And it makes absolute sense that players like Dowell, who are not contributing, move on. But all the best to him. I hope he goes and smashes it down there, and we might be able to get something back from him, because, let's say, we've been paying him 16 grand a week, so there's been a decent outlay there.
Yeah, I mean, Kieran, I just wonder if we're playing slightly devil's advocate with your namesake here. Was he helped by the fact that when he came in to the club, we were told, you know, by a number of people who had seen him down south at Norwich, because he was there with Cantwell, and a lot of people down there were telling us, oh, you know, this guy, he's a better footballer than Todd Cantwell. You know, his skill, he's got better quality. You know, that's what we were being fed. And I think that then led to an expectation level, because, you know, Cantwell, much like Dowell, was a very divisive figure in his time here, but we did see moments, just flashes of the brilliance that Cantwell possessed. I don't think we ever seen that for Kieran Dowell. I think he won maybe two good games for us. The best one probably being, ironically, at Motherwell, when him and Cantwell partnered up quite well. But did that help him either, coming in with that level of hype?
No, because I know people from Norwich who said when we were linked with him, they better not take the gamble, because he's a good footballer. He's got all the ability, but he just can't stay fit. And it just looked like, it kind of looked like a square peg in a round hole with Kieran Dowell in the team. It looked like they were trying to fit him in for the sake of the player, but he just wasn't adapting to the Scottish game. He just didn't look like he was bringing anything in that we didn't have already. I suppose with the expectation thing, it kind of falls down to Dessers as well. We were told that he was Bale's number one target, so we thought he was going to be a world beater. And when he showed up and did what Dessers does, we kind of then went, right, okay. Dowell, listen, I thought Dowell at Norwich was a good player. Again, I know people from Norwich, and I watched a few games when he was there. He was a good player when he was fit, when he got a run of games, and when he had confidence. Like a lot of Rangers players at the moment, I think it's confidence. Dowell, I just don't think the fans had any confidence in him. I don't think his teammates had any confidence in him. And Stuart touched on Michael Beale there. It just shows how clueless him and the scouting network and the board were, because it looks like Clement is now kind of hitting the reset on a lot of those transfers. Cantwell gone, right, okay, Cantwell did have the talent. It was maybe just the attitude. You've got Lammers, Cifuentes, more players that are went out. Going down to Birmingham, I think, will be good for Dowell. I think it might be better for him being closer to home. I think he'll maybe adapt that situation a little bit better, but I just don't think it looked like he was ever really amongst the team. Like it looked like he was that outcast. You know, you get that kid at school that even though the class is playing football, there's that kid that's just not quite fitting in. It kind of felt like that with Dowell a little bit. It didn't look like his teammates were really comfortable when he was on the pitch as well. It just looked like it was a bit of a weird one, to be honest. And it's not too late, obviously, for him to go and try and make his mark at Birmingham. But in terms of Rangers, even if they didn't take out that buy option, I reckon the Rangers would probably settle his contract when he came back. I don't think we'll ever see him in a Rangers shirt again.
Tell me this, guys. Does any of you know what position Dowell plays?
No.
Any?
Is it not Cam? I thought it was centre attacking mid.
But see, the fact that we're all struggling to find out, that tells you how well his time at Rangers has been. So that answers everybody's question. Because none of us really know, is he a centre midfielder? Is he an attacking midfielder? Does he play on the left? Does he play on the right? Nobody really knows. So that tells you, that's pretty damning, that none of us can tell you what position he is.
Yeah, aye. It's one of those things, though, I suppose, and through no fault of his own to a degree, he has been sort of put into positions that he wouldn't necessarily have favoured him as well, and that creates, as you say, Mark, the issue. None of us know where is the boy's strongest position. Okay, another player who's in the news very recently is Jefte. Rumour is circulating, Stuart, that Jefte could possibly be making his way to Chelsea in the summer. Certainly that they're interested in him, at least. Does that surprise you that Chelsea would be interested in him?
Feels like Chelsea are probably interested in just about everybody. You know, if they've got two legs and they kick a football. I suppose yes, in a way, you know, because it has been, it's early, and he's still early in his Rangers career. I think Martin, Ian and I did a show last week for the members where we kind of went through the signings that Clement has been involved in and copping. And, you know, we were praising the signing of Jefte in terms of, yes, there's still a way to go. He's still capable of making mistakes. We've seen that last Thursday at Old Trafford. But he's got something about him. He's got attributes that I think a lot of clubs will be interested in. You know, physical, good turn of pace, the way he drives in the pitch, could improve his final ball, etc. But yeah, but I suppose when you then take a step back, you would then say, well, okay, well, yeah, maybe it's not a major surprise that clubs have maybe started to have a look at that. Looks as if he's quite robust in terms of, you know, he plays quite a lot of games, a good engine on him. So I suppose they would look at it as an opportunity. You know, and we're probably the same with Igaman, in that some of the money that we're talking about, that, you know, which would be a lot of money for us, it's kind of chicken feed for a lot of these big teams, and they'll be willing to take a gamble on it because they'll probably know, well, even if it doesn't work out here, the name that he's playing with Chelsea will probably be able to recoup quite a bit of the money anyway. So slightly surprised that it's came this early. Maybe slightly surprised that it is a team of the stature of Chelsea. But, you know, reading the kind of some of the statements that came out, that they're saying that there are clubs around Europe that are looking at him. So I think we should be starting to maybe have some optimism in terms of how our scouting is going at the moment. You know, if that's along with Igaman, Jefte, two players that you've not spent a huge amount on, but are already kind of gathering some interest. So I think there is positives there. Be interested to see with this whether anything materialises in the next week, or whether that's going to be something for the summer. But we're in a strong position. He's got a long-term contract, so we can play a bit of hardball with some of these teams. If this was Chelsea looking at a 21-year-old in the Championship or anything like that, they would be having to pay decent money for it. And we need to start changing that mindset where we don't let these promising players go in the cheap. So be interested to see how that one develops.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, I'll throw it to you. Some people saying, and there was a point in there that Stuart made about the scouting that I will come back to shortly, but Paul McCorkle, I think this might be a wee bit overly ambitious, Mark. If they want him to start at 15 million because they're paying for potential. But when you consider we paid, I think, what was it, 680,000, I think it was, or something around that figure for Jefte, you would have to assume, obviously, in the hope that nothing happens to him between now and the end of the season that would cause that interest to wane. If he was to go to Chelsea, well, surely you're getting a couple of million for him, and certainly more than making back the money that's been spent on him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, just to kind of echo what Stuart said. There's boys at Chelsea's B team or reserve side that are millionaires that have never kicked a ball for them. I mean, let that sink in. There's boys down there that are on 15 grand a week, that some of them 20 grand a week, that have never kicked a ball for the first team. I think something stupid before the season started, there was something like 40 or 30 odd or 40 odd signed first team players. So, I mean, is it true? Is it not true? I mean, probably time will tell. Should we sell ourselves short? No, because we hold all the cards. If somebody wants to come and bring all sorts of money to take him, then by all means. Am I saying he's a £20 million player? No. But listen, the fact of the matter is, he's a young boy, and at the moment, how much money has Chelsea flung about for potential from all over the place, all over Europe? He's a 6 foot Brazilian left back that's got hundreds of pace, likes to get forward, grown as a player. I think he's for the start of the season. I remember at the start of the season there was Rangers fans on here telling us he was absolutely rotten and he got shot him. I'm sure you guys will remember that as well. So, as I said, for me, it's not without the realms. And let's be realistic. We've been underselling players for years and years and years. And this mentality, every single one is, we just talking about, I mean, he's no 15 million's a bit. Why? Why is it? Why not? Celtic are getting that kind of money.
I think you have to have an element of success that these players have had to show that they've been, because you're looking at it, and Alexander makes a point when you look at Celtic as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I find that patently absurd, to be honest with you. That they signed Jota for 6.3 million and sold him for 25. My opinion was he was never worth 25. But now they're bringing him back for a fraction of the money they spent on him. So they're making absolute profit, and players are bringing. But that's because they won things. If Jefte,
but listen, what I'm saying is, what you're saying, so what you're saying is that some level of success. Some of these boys that they're buying for 20 million have played the Championship, never won nothing.
True.
Some of these boys that they brought in for Europe never won nothing. So I understand what you're saying about some. That's in our head. That's our mindset. It needs to be successful. You go for big money. No, they don't. And listen, exactly what Stuart said as well. Big money down south is 80 million and 100 million. No 10, 15. That's chicken. Like Stuart said, absolute chicken feed to them. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You're paying bloody 6 and 7 million for teenagers, didn't it? Do you know what I mean? So let's not sell ourselves short. Do I think he's going to go for stupid amounts of cash? Probably not. But let's not have our starting. Let's have our starting point there and let him bring us down. Let's not start our point there and then him bring us down. So I think as a club and as a fan base, I think that there's a lot to be happy about, and a lot to be excited about. The fact that we've got a couple of players now that are that are getting talked about. I mean, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, none of our players were getting talked about. Nobody was even making up stories that they were going to go to Chelsea, or Tottenham was looking at them. Or, do you know what I mean? So, listen, and a lot of people have slated. I've been on pods where there's been people ranting and raving about Cotton needs to get shot and blah 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 and this and that. And when you start looking at this in the bigger picture, maybe no as daft as they look. What we doing? Why we promoting him to director of football and all that kind of stuff? Just because we're not winning and things aren't happening, everybody's ranting and raving and no looking at the bigger picture. And I come on here all the time and talk about the bigger picture. I get shot down all the time about it. But maybe there's a wee bit of something happening here. Maybe there's, as I said, even for us to start talking about players getting linked to teams like this. How good is that? I mean, the difference in it, as I said, obviously, 2 months ago, it was all doom and gloom, and we were wanting to kill everybody and sell everybody and sack everybody here and there and everywhere. So it just shows you the difference in football. Probably why we love the game, because it can run so much emotion, but things can change in a heartbeat. But for me, I always take a pot, as usual. No, you know what I mean, you make a laugh and a joke about it, about me being a positive one out is all. But for me, that's massive. As I said, you look at, we have never, for years and years and years, have we been even talked about in rumours about getting linked, players in our squad getting linked to. And the problem is, we're bringing young boys in with potential, and that's what we've done at the start of the season. So, and that's going to be our way forward now, and it needs to be our way forward, because if we don't, we're not going any further. It's as simple as that. We are not going to grow as a club if we keep trying to bring in second-rate guys for the Championship at 29 and hoping that they used to be good and hoping we can get a song out of them, because we're not going to get any profit for that.
Connor, can I just say, see, when it comes to player trading model, Igaman might be the outlier there, where I think what you're seeing from him, you set a very high bar and say, we're not entertaining anything until, you absolutely smash through. And yeah, you're talking some serious money, maybe the most that we've ever brought in for a transfer fee. But not every transfer as part of the player trading model needs to be like that. So as you say, if you've brought Jefte in for 680,000 or whatever to £1 million, whatever it may well be, but you then maybe move him on for, say, 6, 7, 8 million, that's still very decent business. And that's your player trading model. Absolutely work. And if you can put in a sell-on clause or anything like that within that, then, you're getting back. What we can't do is fall into the trap as fans of saying, well, Jefte, we want 15 to 20 million for him, and if we don't get that, then we're not doing any business. The player trading model needs to kick in. The manager needs some funds from somewhere, so you might need to take the bullet. You might want to play hardball with Igaman, but you might need to take the bullet and say, well, we'll accept maybe 6, 7, 8 million because that's a good deal.
What do you make to Aldo's point there, though, about we played the hardball with Morelos, and it spectacularly backfired. We got offered, I think, 18 million or something for Leo, or 16 maybe, but it was a good offer. We turned that down, and then 2.5 years later, they walked out the door for nothing.
Yeah, that was a mistake. We absolutely should have taken that money. I mean, what were we wanting? I think we were saying we wanted 20. What I would say is Igaman is, well, he's far superior to Morelos all round. He's a goal scorer. He's better technically. He offers more. And within 6 months, he's attracting interest from some serious clubs. So I think there is an element of saying, that, and with the length of time that you've got in your contract, again, I'm not saying that we're saying 50 million or anything outrageous, but I think you can set your stall at a fairly high level there, because, again, there is a potential, even just his demeanour and how he handles himself, I think is better than Morelos, who, could just go off and win at that point. So, yeah, you don't want to play hardball too much that then you lose out again. But I think I think you have to get the balance right in terms of somebody like Jefte, 680,000 is 8 million. Is that a good bit of business? Somebody like Igaman, where's the ceiling for him at the moment? I don't know. I think he's still got gears and stuff like that to go on. So I think you want to be. He's the outlier to me, where I think you can be a bit more defensive and play a bit more hardball in terms of where you start the bidding for him.
Yeah, Kieran, I'll bring you in on this. You've waited there patiently to give us your point of view on it. Look, it is, as people in the comments rightly say, at this moment in time, it is just rumours, right? That's all it is. It's rumours. We don't know. It's speculation. Chelsea, rumoured to be interested. It might or might not happen come the summer. Certainly, I imagine other teams might pop up as well in that period. But, would you kind of go along with sort of Stuart and Mark about getting the best value, obviously? Because for me, I just don't want us to go down the route we did with Morelos again. And I understand that he almost carried the team for a period of time. But once he started to falter, it never really recovered, and his value it went down every year he stayed at us after. And I want to make sure this time round we're getting that right. And if Jefte goes in the summer, get the right money for him, and don't certainly hold your ground. Just don't push it too far.
Yeah, absolutely. We've made those mistakes before. Even with Kent, we're getting all right offers for Kent. Well, I say all right now. At the time, maybe we all got a bit far-fetched thinking he could go for more. Again, he walked out the door for free, and he can't even get a five-a-side game by the looks of it now. Jefte, I like Jefte. I think Jefte's got real potential, but I think he's quite raw. His defensive game isn't great at the moment. He has been found out a few times. His pace is frightening. I think alone that's what gets clubs looking at him. He's so young. He's so quick. He's just got an engine. He doesn't seem to tire. He just seems to want to run. He's very good going forward. His final ball is definitely looks like he's working on it. If Chelsea was to come in with a quite a decent offer, would we be cheeky to ask to have him back on loan? Because I don't think that Jefte is going to get him that first team of Chelsea for a while. If he does, it's maybe a case of them buying him, getting him a little bit more skilled and sending them on elsewhere. I don't think Jefte will play a lot for the Chelsea first team. If he was to go to Chelsea, I would have been quite happy if we were to take something for him to try and get him on loan for at least a season or two again. I think that there's many gears that he can go up as well. Iggerman, what Stuart was saying there, I don't even know if the sky's the limit for Iggerman. I think he is frightening. Me and Lewis, you see in the group chat how much that we really like Iggerman. He's just so naturally gifted. But do you know what I like about it? He's no got this pettiness that Morelos did. He's not trying to nip at the back of defenders' heels all the time, and he maybe goes down a bit too easy sometimes, but he's never having a big argument. He's never trying to fight. He just looks like he's enjoying the game, and we've brought him from a place where really football's not massive to a league that's not got the most eyes on him, but he's already making that impression, especially in Europe. I don't know how true it is, but I did see there was a good couple of scouts for different teams at Old Trafford looking at him. I know Tottenham were apparently sniffing about him for a while. I think Iggerman is so much better than Tottenham. I think that it's just his raw ability, and that's only not even half a season that he's played in a higher league than he's played before. I think that he's honestly a really good player, and I think that we shouldn't make the mistake that we did with Morelos and Kent. If the offer's right, then we take it, but we reinvest that into somebody else and bring them through. We need to go back to the feeding club mentality instead of having all these superstars that we kind of get rid of, or players that we end up leaving on a free. We need to get back to that mentality where we bring players in, develop them, and then put them into bigger things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just bring a super chat up from Stephen Gillespie. He's subtracted his £5. Thanks very much, Stephen. He says, if we're punting everyone, are we all ready for another rebuild? I'd be looking to lose 2, maybe 3 in summer. Jefte and Iggerman both on heavy contracts. Mark, your take on that? Are we ready for another rebuild. I don't know if I'd brand it a rebuild, because if one or two go out and you get good money for them, then you're not rebuilding the whole squad. You're presumably just reinvesting it to bring in other decent players that can fill those roles.
I would say we're probably in the midst of a rebuild rather than another rebuild, because for me we need probably another 3-4 players, and I think that if you get short of say I know we're speculating here on rumours and stuff like that, right? But in the ideal world, you get good money for Igaman in the summer, and you get good money for say Jefte. You can go and maybe buy the 4 players that we need, maybe 5 players with that kind of money. You know what I mean? And buy probably 5 better quality players than we were actually looking at in the first place. So for me, that is the very definition of a rebuild. As I said, at the moment, I would say we still need a centre half, a centre mid, definitely another striker. We need a right-sided midfielder. We're overly reliant on Tierney at right side of midfield. Same left side of midfield. We've got players there. We've got bodies, but none of them can play. None of them are fit. None of them are ever fit. So for me, I think that we're in the midst, and probably this rebuild, or the midst of this rebuild, is going to probably take us another season and a half, 2 seasons maybe, to get to where we want to be. You want to see progress year on year, but I think the harsh reality is that we've not really got the money to be going and spending money on players, and the only way we're going to recoup money and get money in for players and carry on the rebuild, so to speak, is if you punt the likes of Igaman, which is probably the thing that's probably going to break our hearts, because we see a lot of potential in the boy. It looks like a great player. Nowhere near the finished article, but he's growing, and every time you watch him, you see him growing. But you get good money for him, then you reinvest that. That, as you said, even if you get the right kind of money for Igaman, you're talking about you can maybe bring in 3 quality players for that kind of money. So that's just the nature of the beast, and that's the way it's going to need to be at the moment. So as I said, it's that whole another rebuild. We're never near finished with this rebuild, because if we are, I'm chucking it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had our fill, to be fair. Okay, Stuart, I'll throw a point to you, actually, if I can find where it is. Right. Our very own Ian Thompson. He is asking the question here about, he's saying, here's the bit, where's the balance? What is still important? Can he sell everybody in similar timelines and still expect success? Now, I take that point on board, Stuart, but it is the job of the club and of the people that are running it to make sure that selling players doesn't equate to not having success, to make sure that it's about the turnover of players. That if you have 2 good quality players that go out, then you make sure you bring 2 in. That's how that should work. Because you need to, and again, I hate to compare us to them, but how many players left the Celtic team that failed to win the 10 in a row season? And then that next season, and I know they had more money, I get that. So before anybody shouts at you, I know they had a bigger budget, but that was partly because the amount of money they got for some of their players as well. And they reinvested that into bringing in a whole host of players. And guess what? They still went on and won a league and cup double that season. Now, that's partly because of how poor we were, but for me, I don't necessarily believe that one has to mean the other goes.
I agree with you, and whilst I do get what Ian's saying, and he touched on, we can't sell everyone in similar timelines. We can't dictate when clubs come in and offer money for our players. So, what do you do in that situation? Do I think Clement, Coppin believed that after 6 months, Igaman and Jefte would be attracting the attention that they are? No. I think they're probably saying, look, we're buying potential here. It might take them a wee bit of time to kind of ease in. Hopefully by this point, they're starting to show glimpses of what they can do. By the end of the first season, they're kind of regulars in there. We're starting to really see it. And then we get another season out of them. They're maybe ahead of their that development of where we thought they would be. And like I say, you can't then dictate if it's Spurs or if it's a Chelsea or whoever it may well be, picking up the phone and saying, we want to make you an offer for those players. Then it's about, I do understand, do do we stand a better chance of winning trophies if we keep Igaman for a few seasons? Yes, absolutely. But if somebody comes knocking with a big offer that actually is too good to turn down, and also, by the way, that the player might want, because with the best will in the world, we can offer Igaman a new contract, and I don't know what he's on at the moment, but give him a decent wage rise. But if somebody from the top 5 leagues comes in and offers him 60, 70 grand a week, his agent will be on saying, my player wants a bit of that. Are you prepared to offer him 60? Of course we're not. So it works both ways in that. I do understand the point. Yes, we would love to keep them here for a period of time and we get to enjoy them. They make us successful. But you cannot dictate when these teams come knocking. And then it's just about what they offer and whether we believe it meets our valuation. But the players will play a part in this as well, and their agents.
Yeah, they almost certainly will. Okay, let's have a chat then about Janis Hagi. Obviously, another man who's a sort of talk of the town of late. We kind of knew his contract would be running out at the end of this season, but by all accounts, a new contract offer is imminent. I don't think it's actually officially been made yet, but I think it's certainly on the cards. Kieran, I seen you furiously nodding when I said Hagi, so I'll come to you first on it. I mean, from what I've read, and I will say that it is a cursory glance that I've read, so I might have missed something, but it does seem that any new contract offer that will be offered to him will include some form of wage cut. Now, firstly, do you think we should be keeping him? Secondly, do you think he will take a wage cut to stay?
So, in terms of the wage cut, I mean, I think that's a bit harsh on the boy. I really do. The absolute shit that we have put him through. They've only just got him really playing again to then tell him he might have to take a wage cut. For the love of the club, do I think he'll take it? Yes. I think he will, depending on how much it is. Hagi, I absolutely love Hagi, mate. And again, in the group chat, me and Lewis are probably his biggest advocates. We think that he's terrific. The passing, the vision, just the enthusiasm and the all-around attitude. I feel Hagi is somebody we need to keep unless a good bid comes in. Hagi, the contract situation, I think he will sign it, right? If he does get told it's a bit of a pay cut, but he's in the next European squad, or do you know what I mean, or something like that. Hagi, for me, is a mainstay in this team. The way that he goes about the park, the way he goes about his work, we haven't had a player that hates that other side as much as Hagi, by the looks of it just now, in a while. He looks like he gets what it is to be a Rangers player, and we don't have that many people in the team that do just now. So I would be giving Hagi, I wouldn't be giving him a pay cut for a start, but maybe obviously he gets a bit older and the value could decrease, etc. I think his name's always going to attract attention because of his father, but I do feel that Hagi will sign the contract, and I think he will be a mainstay still.
Mark, your take on the Hagi situation? I mean, I tend to agree with Kieran, and actually, when you think what was happening at the start of this season with that boy, he was being, he was dumped into the B team, and he was actually performing quite well in the B team, but he was just completely dumped in there. We weren't getting our house together because we knew if we played him another game, I think there was some sort of bonus he was due to be paid. And it took us far too long to sit down at a table and actually have the conversation with him and say, look, here's the deal. We want you to play for us. However, we're not going to be able to afford this, and trying to negotiate. And I don't know how much of that was in Clement not fancying him. But he's came in, he's basically waived that, took that cut to come back in, and I don't think you can fault him since he's come back into the squad.
No, not at all. But listen, how much do you want to take over this boy? As far as I'm concerned, listen, in the summer, see if he had a good season when he was away on loan, he'd have been gone. Simple as that. Absolutely simple as that. At the time, we kind of backed him into a corner. for me, it didn't really sit well with me at all, what we done as a club. And fair play to that boy. That boy worked hard, get his head down, and fought his way back in. Now, it's a different kettle of fish altogether, because now Hagi has got a good few games under his belt. He's playing well. He's looking good again. He's looking as if his touch is back. He's looking as if he's enjoying his football again. He's looking like one of the better players in the team.
Mm.
Now, as his bargaining chips, has his stock increased or decreased when it comes to negotiating? So for me, you offer him an extension, but you offer him an extension in the same terms as he's on just now. If it was me and somebody, so I buckled down, I worked hard, I worked my way back into the side. I took basically what they're saying is a wage cut, and you come back to me and say, do you know what, you've done really well, we want to re-sign you, we want to give you another contract, and then go, oh, by the way, see how all the crap, all the shit we'll give you at the start of the season, what's the chances of you we're knocking a few thousand off of that as well? What would you say? Because I'd be like, fucking chase yourself. Not a chance. So, for me, even asking him to keep the same amount of money as he is a bit cheeky, as far as I'm concerned. I think that as it stands at the minute, Hagi's had a good period since he's come back into the side. I think that a lot of other clubs have sat up and took notice that we're sniffing about him and thinking to ourselves, don't know if he's worth the gamble or worth the chance. And there was, we'll hang off and see what happens, because we maybe get him for free. So now we're 6 months away, and he's got all the bargaining chips. He's got all the sway. Now he's got other teams probably sniffing about him, offering him money, offering him big contracts. I was reading the day there's a couple of Serie A teams sniffing about him as well. So listen, that boy has done everything that was asked of him. He's took it in the chin. He swallowed his pride for somebody that is a massive superstar in his country. So for me, even saying to him, look, we'll give you an extension and the same money, I think it's a bit cheeky. So I think the boy's a smashing player. I think even still, but in our team, they're still playing him out of position. They're not playing him as a 10. Yeah, so what does that tell you? Because as far as if I was a player and I'm a 10, and he said issues before about not being played as a 10, hasn't he? So
yeah,
for me, same again. This mobber not playing me in my right position. This mobber horrible to me over the summer period. This mobber cheekily came to me and said, do you know what, you've done well. What's the chances of you taking a couple of £1,000 pay cut? Cheeky as, really, really cheeky as far as I'm concerned. So for me, the boy deserves, at the very, very minimum, the same kind of money that he's on and extended. But for me, you give him better bonuses, i.e., goal scoring bonuses, assist bonuses, even the European bonus of some sort to try and kind of sweeten the deal. Because as it stands at the minute, if I'm Hagi, I'm like, do you know what? Fuck yous, I'm off. Simple as that. I don't get me wrong. He loves the club and all that. But listen, here we're getting offers now. I'll tell you right now, here we're getting decent offers for decent clubs, and he holds all the cards as it stands at the moment.
Can I ask you that? Oh, yeah, I'll ask you the question. Are his numbers good enough?
It depends on what numbers you're looking at. I mean,
goals and assists. Goals and assists.
Well, directly, probably not. But how many goals does he aid by just the play that he has, by that pass into the player that can then, turn into the space to make the assist, or, just by some of his all-round play? I agree, his numbers could and probably should be a bit better, but I do think there's the flip side of that there's what he offers for me personally, and I'll vote back to you, Stuart. I feel that since he came back into the squad and into the midfield, we have looked much more of an attacking threat than we had before that. Now, that's partly down to Eggman as well. Can't deny that, and Danilo certainly has played his part. But Hagi was the first one to come in, and he made, just by his presence and what he's been doing, I think made us look more threatening.
By the way, I like Janis Hagi, don't quite like him as much as Kieran and and Lewis right enough in the chat here, two super fans. So if he was to sign a new contract, I would be happy. I just wonder though, if he is on a decent wage and let's say whatever it is, 20 grand a week or whatever, is that money that we could potentially be using that might get somebody in that offers more on a consistent basis? I don't know, just offering that thought. I think he has made a difference, by the way, and the way he's conducted himself. I take my hat off to him. And you're right, Connor. I think he has come into the team and he's brought a bit of an energy and a zip to it, which was much needed. I just don't. I suppose I've just always got a bit of a niggle about whether or not there's that consistency. And do you see someone who's playing in and around that forward area like a Hagi? Do you think he's getting 15 goals a season for us? I'm not sure that he does that. I think we need players in and around that area that do give us that. So that would be my only slight concern. But you know, I wouldn't be opposed to him signing a new contract. But I do wonder if there's if there's maybe better out there.
Yeah, fair point. Don't forget, folks, to like and subscribe if you enjoy what you're hearing. You can also become a member of the channel as well. We have 3 tiers. There's a supporter tier, a CEO tier, and a sponsor tier. You get all sorts of bonus and extra content on there, including this evening at 9 p.m. You'll have an EPL show to look forward to. I'm sure there'll be some thoughts there, particularly on a certain former Celtic manager who seems to be under a bit of pressure right now. So make sure you're tuned in for that if you're not already a member, amongst loads of other things. Okay. Lockeye the View with £10 super chat. The measure of Coppin will be the players he brings in after we sell on the likes of Jefte, Raski and Igaman. That is when we'll know if he is good enough. Now, this harps back to something I was going to mention earlier when you spoke about the scouting department, Stuart, when we were talking about Jefte and saying, Jefte and Igaman show progress and success, which to a degree I do agree with. However, I'm looking at this here, and Lockhart, if he's right about Coppin. However, if I hear us sign another player and come out and say straight away he's not ready to come into the first team, I think I might throw my telly out the window, because, quite frankly, that is not. We can't keep signing players that are apparently not fit to be in the team. Now, bizarre as it is, Rafael Fernandez was actually on the bench, I believe yesterday. However, didn't play. Fair enough, and he was only on the bench out of necessity, I think, because a few players were out. But Stuart, that's my concern. We'll just I'm all for signing players for the future, but you need to sign players that can come into the squad and immediately start playing for you as well.
100%. And our injury crisis is again baffling, absolutely. But although I'll take some of it. Some of it has been footballing injuries, so you can understand a wee bit of it. But yes, you're right. We need players who, whilst I appreciate, it might take a bit of time to settle into a new country, a new culture, etc. We want them to be coming into our first team and hitting the ground running, rather than this, bedding. We can't bed every player in. Your Igaman again might be the outlier on that, but we need to be getting that right. I think that the point in general I do agree with, though. I think that will be a measure. I think Coppin has, and Clement, to be fair, although you look at the league table and the season as a whole is going to be in the category of not successful so far, I think you can look at the signings and say, well, actually, there's been a change in mindset, and there's reasons to be positive about the approach that we're taking. But it's about getting that hit rate at a decent level. You're never going to get 100% hit rate when it comes to all your transfers, but we were probably hitting about 30% success rate. We need to get that up into the 60s, into the 70% mark. So yes, if we were to move on a couple of players in the summer, who's on the list? Who's next? And it's also that if you then bring in players who, again, start off well and are doing well, it gives the fan base a confidence, one, that the people in those positions are doing their job right, that actually we have a scouting department that is working continuously to say, yes, that's who we've got in the moment, but we've got a list of 1, 2, 3 players that, should something happen to them, we're ready to move for them straight away. So I think it's a fair point. Actually, I think it's an important one that, you know, I think this summer is going to be a huge window for us anyway. But add to that, if we do move on some key players, how we replace them is vitally important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's also vitally important is that Ian Dillon gets himself down to the opticians, because this is a blue top. So I don't know if he maybe colourblind, but right, I'm keen because we've got 10 minutes left and we haven't spoke about it, and it needs speaking about. Yesterday, of course, we were away at Tannadice, 3-1 win. Everybody's happy, except for what happened at the end. Kieran, we'll start with you. And it's important that we have this conversation when we've won, because then you can't accuse us of sour grapes then, because it didn't affect the result of the game. However, it is a clear problem for me. Now, Diomande gets sent off, Kieran, after a bit of a pushing and shoving match between him and Kevin Holt, who, by the way, was on a booking himself, so could easily have been given a second booking. Nick Walsh is then recommended to go to the monitor by Don Robertson in VAR, looks at it in the monitor, sticks by his decision to send him off. It looks as though we're going to appeal this. First question, Kieran, your actual thoughts on the decision itself. Second question, should we and will we win this appeal?
Wow, it's absolutely baffling we even need to have this discussion. Never a red card. Never a red card. If you look at it from the start, Holt is pushing Diomande. He's trying to get a rise out of Diomande. Diomande falls back. Look, as I've said, VAR can make a peck on the cheek look like a porno, right? I've said this for the start, and I stick by it. However, even looking at the VAR incident, he doesn't make contact with Holt, or if he does, it's the slightest contact. As he's falling back, there is no way that he's trying to actually hit Holt. So it's just baffling, because Walsh, you can see him standing there, everyone's frustrated. The Dundee players, Dundee United, sorry, for getting shouted for that, they don't know what's going on. They're as confused as Diomande and the Rangers players. So then the VAR obviously say, look, Walsh, I think you've got it wrong. And it's obviously everyone there, including the pundits, go, well, common sense will prevail here then, surely. And he goes and he checks and you watch it. And even when you see it up close on VAR, every single person sitting there goes, oh, well, it's got that wrong then. He sticks to the decision. And it's baffling. You see Clement's reaction, you see the fans' reaction, you see Diamande's reaction. He's trying to speak to Raskin and Butland and not even have to explain himself, because Raskin's laughing at such a stupid decision that could easily been Walsh going, rush of blood to the head there, got that wrong, a yellow card for you kind of thing. It's just absolutely ridiculous that we even have to have the discussion. Rangers will appeal it, and if there is any common sense left in this world, we'll win the appeal.
Well, you would think so, Mark, wouldn't you? But just before I come to you on this, because this is the beauty when you're live on a show. I have just been sent a message on WhatsApp. The Heart and Hand podcast are apparently reporting that Rangers have indeed offered new deals to Janis Hagi, Finlay Curtis and Zach Lovelace, down to the players now. That will be a talking point, I imagine, for tomorrow night's members show, because there's no point in going over old ground with Hagi and we don't know the ins and outs of the Curtis and Lovelace thing, and we've got 5 minutes left. So, but we'll certainly cover that tomorrow on the show. But as I say, that is the latest update that's just came through there. But Mark, on the decision from yesterday, one thing of note, and it's been pointed out a couple of times here as well, Paul McGorrickle, one of the people pointing it out, when you see what Nick Walsh was shown on VAR, which we can all see, they didn't actually show him all the angles. They kept showing him the angle that he already seen from behind. Now, the angle from the side, and Billy Dodds actually made this point as well, actually on the BBC yesterday, there's an angle from the side that clearly shows there is the bare minimum, if any, contact from Dio on Holt, and he's also been shoved. So, of course, his arms come up. I don't understand why that can still be a red card, and if it's upheld, I think it tells you all you need to know. I mean, the SFA were quick to come out as well with their statement on it yesterday when they said about, it was deemed that it was he threw his hand at a player in a non-negligible manner, so it was deemed violent conduct.
For me, let me just start by saying I think it's probably one of the worst referee decisions I've seen. No idea what he was thinking, what he's seen. Strange, very, very strange. We've said it many times on here. Is it just incompetence, or is it more than that? And I genuinely do not like to say they kind of words, but I don't know. I mean, that for me, I have no idea what he was thinking. Almost as if it was trying to make a point or trying to make it a bit himself. I don't know, but I think that the fact that there's somebody in your ear saying, maybe we want to take a look at this. You then, and to be fair, genuinely and generally as well, that a lot of these incompetent referees in the Scottish game have used VAR as a get out of jail, and instead of making a decision, leaving it to VAR. Now he made the decision quite quickly, and then I think, I mean, they've all been brandishing about this "don't back down, double down" thing, but I can't get my head around why, if somebody in your ear that is knows the rule book the same as you know the rule book, which is he's a referee as well, and he says you maybe have got this wrong, go and have a look at it. In other words, I'm trying to do you a favour here. The fact that he's sitting with screens and saying, look, I think this is worth another look. He's went over and had another look, and I agree with you, they should have showed him 2 or 3 different angles, which they didn't do. But as well, you don't know what they're saying in their ear and what he's saying to them at that time as well. So I don't know. I think this will all come out the wash. I think that for the good of the Scottish game, forget everything else, this needs to be overturned. I think it's ridiculous. I think it shows our referees and our game in a very, very, very bad light. I can't get my head around why it would. I mean, everybody that you've looked at, they do the referee bit, and Sky Sports and stuff like that. They've all shot it to pieces. Everybody. Other podcasts have had referees on. They think.
Well, you see everybody, Mark. I mean, there are some, and this is it's a gripe of mine, right? We all, right, regardless of whatever team you support, regardless of the tinted specs you wear, whether they're blue, green, and white, whatever, I don't care, right? There's an undercurrent of frustration with all football fans that everybody has in common, that is the sheer incompetency of refereeing and the standards of it in this country. So what we seen yesterday is the second time a referee's gone to a monitor in this country in a month and upheld a wrong red card decision, because Chris Graham done it for Motherwell against Kilmarnock as well. Now, my point here is, when we all know that, why do you still then have people who insist on, instead of trying to help the issue, I will just play the wind-up card? No, you've got Sutton saying, he slapped him in the face. I mean, you've got some of their fans, you'd think he delivered a haymaker to him, and he didn't. You just think, surely this issue of incompetency and inconsistency can't be resolved if the fans of all the clubs are just bickering amongst themselves and laughing at the other because a bad decision's gone against them. You need everybody pulling in the same direction.
So, Connor, just let me jump on that there. You're talking about incompetence referees, right? And obviously the incompetence of that yesterday. But see, throughout that whole game, how many times was Diomande smashed into? How many times did they leave something on him? And the only time he did react, it was actually to Tav. It wasn't to the Motherwell player. The Motherwell, you got me saying Motherwell now. The Dundee United player. So it comes far and few between as well than just red card decisions. There's a lot of yellow cards that could have been given out yesterday. As I said, he was absolutely smashed a good few times. And look, I love Chris Boyd, right? I like what he says. See him and Sutton put together on Sky. That's not for analysis. That's just to bring in views because they know they're going to try and wind each other up. That's tit for tat between them every single time.
But see,
Yeah,
so
it's not helping the game, is it?
I'll come in. So a few points on this. The statement that was supposedly asked for, by all accounts, that isn't an official SFA statement. Journalists contacted the SFA and almost it's like a holding note. There is some doubt whether or not that holding note went too far, because actually then before an appeal has even been submitted, you're already given a decision. It's casting. So I think Rangers have, if it does come back that they decide that we're upholding the decision, then I think Rangers have got cause to go back to them with regards to that holding note, but it wasn't an official statement. On the point with, seen a really good point in follow about Sky's coverage, etc. And Sutton and Boyd, and by the way, Sutton is worse than Boyd, but I think Boyd has to take some of the stick around this because he is part of it and does play to it as well. But what you have is clearly a production team behind the cameras telling them this is what we want from you. Because I guarantee you, if Chris Sutton is commentating on a game down south, he tells you that's never a red card. And he actually probably goes after the referee. But up here, he's got a production or a producer in his ear saying, wind him up, because that's all they care about up here. And that's the level of analysis, the kind of punditry and the analysis that Scottish football deserves. It's pathetic. I literally turn it off when it gets to half time and it gets to, you turn it off because you're not gaining anything by what they say. You've got him and ex-Dundee United player who now seem to be the only two people out there on a limb saying that it wasn't a red card. Multiple referees from either within this country or outside of this country who are saying it's not, ex-professionals saying it's not, it was never a red card.
But should you not, Stuart, sorry to jump in on you, but should you not, and we will wrap up shortly, I promise, but should the case not be then in those situations, if you've got Sean Dillon, Dundee United player, Chris Boyd, former Rangers player, both support the respective clubs, not a problem. Shouldn't the third man in the middle therefore be somebody who is impartial, who is unbiased? Now, people will say, but Chris Dutton's not a Dundee United fan, a Rangers fan, aye, but his connection is that he's a Celtic fan. And you can't possibly say he's unbiased. So surely the actual better way of doing it would be have a neutral, because I expect Sean Dillon to make the case for red card, and I don't blame him because he's a Dundee. I get it. And Boyd, will make the case for Rangers. If you've got someone who's properly a neutral, that at least lends credibility, because then they can say, well, actually, I don't have the lens you two have, and I can say that I think it's this.
Yeah, you're absolutely. Sky don't want that. And actually, I would come back and say to you, well, do you know what? Sorry, I want better than Chris Boyd being, well, I'm an ex-Ranger, and so all I'll say is things that go pro-Rangers, or Sean Dillon is there just to give you a pro-Dundee United viewpoint. Look at what the actual situation. Look at the incident, and then give your view. Now, if Sean Dillon 100% believes that that's a red card, well, then I would suggest that Sky need to think we probably don't want to get Sean Dillon back to provide analysis. But they will. They do not care. And just on the refereeing point, Kieran mentioned the phrase common sense. That's where everything went out the window yesterday. See if Nick Walsh had taken the two players to the side and just told them, pack it in, or booked both of them.
That's what he should have done.
Nobody talks about it. Nobody.
Because if he'd done that, Kevin Holt would have been off, because he was.
I'm not convinced he was already booked, by the way.
Can I just cut across you a wee bit? Just something that I kind of wanted to mention and bring up before we go. That regarding the appeal, I think that the appeal board are going to see a kind of different animal, because Patrick Stewart, this is what he used to do for a living. So I think that if they're expecting an easy ride, I don't think they're going to get it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, we'll sort of wrap it up there. Just a couple of things I need to do before we do. Firstly, you're right, Alexander, and I'll tell you one thing, everybody, because you've got to plug the content, even if it's older content. If you want to listen to a proper debate about media coverage and biases and all the rest of it in this country, we done a podcast last year in the summer regarding this. Nearly 2 hours it lasted. Myself, Martin, Wolf, we're all on that podcast that evening. We had a real good chat about it. So by all means, check that out. But do that after you've watched the EPL show at 9 p.m. if you are a member. If you're not, still time for you to sign up. And Jim Sloan has given us a £10 super chat. That's his opinion on it. Incompetent his backside, they're corrupt. Well, yeah, that's certainly some people's point of view. But yes, that will do us for right. My thanks to Mark, Stuart, and Kieran. I have thoroughly enjoyed that. And yeah, as I said, be here in half an hour for the EPL show. Until then, we'll see you.